After 60 years, now the Carlos Gardel mystery finally solved and isn't good. To understand the magnitude of the Gardel mystery, we must first introduce the man himself, or perhaps the idea of the man. The individual we know as Carlos Gardel rose to become one of the most influential artists of the 20th century. But the story of his beginnings is shrouded in uncertainty from the very first page. Official biographies often list his birthplace as Toulouse, France, or Tacuarembó, Uruguay, or even Buenos Aires, Argentina. His birth date is debated, ranging from 1887 to 1890. This isn't just a minor discrepancy. For nearly 100 years, the precise date and place of his birth have been the subject of passionate, often nationalistic, debate. What we do know is that the boy who would become Gardel was raised in the working-class district of Almagro in Buenos Aires, Argentina. He was brought up by his single mother, Berta Gardel, a laundress who struggled to make ends meet. His childhood was steeped in the sounds and sights of the city's burgeoning music scene. The theaters, the cafes, and the streets echoing with the melancholic, passionate rhythms of tango. This was the crucible where his immense talent was forged. From these humble, uncertain origins, a star would rise, a star whose true identity would become the most enduring enigma of his legendary life. Young Carlos didn't dream of factory work or simple labor. He had a voice that was rich, expressive, and perfectly suited for the evolving sound of tango. He began singing in the cafetines, the small cafes and bars where musicians gathered, honing their craft and entertaining patrons. It was a competitive world, full of raw talent, but Gardel possessed something special, not just vocal ability, but charisma, an undeniable stage presence. He teamed up with fellow singer Jose Rosano, forming a popular duo. Their harmonies and interpretations resonated with audiences. The turning point came with the advent of recording technology. In 1917, Gardel made his first recording, a tango titled Mi Noche Triste, My Sad Night. It wasn't the first tango ever recorded, but Gardel's emotive delivery, his ability to convey the raw emotion of the lyrics, set him apart. This single recording launched him into a new stratosphere of fame within Argentina and Uruguay. He became a solo artist, refining his style, blending the traditional payada with the emerging urban tango. Audiences flocked to his performances. His voice was everywhere. He earned the nickname El Zorzal Criollo, the Criollo thrush. A criollo is someone of Spanish descent born in the Americas, and a thrush is a bird with a beautiful song. The nickname solidified his image as a true son of South American soil, a symbol of Argentine identity. Gardel's fame wasn't confined to the Rio de la Plata for long. His records sold millions across Latin America and even reached Europe. He became the undisputed king of tango, and a cultural phenomenon whose voice was instantly recognizable, whose melodies defined a genre, and whose name evoked the very soul of Buenos Aires. Yet, despite this immense musical success, there was another frontier calling him, the silver screen. This was the era when cinema was rapidly evolving, shedding its silent past and embracing the revolutionary power of sound. Hollywood, ever on the lookout for new markets and bankable stars, recognized the unique potential of a Spanish-speaking superstar who possessed not only a transcendent voice but also undeniable charisma and a face made for the camera. The major American studio, Paramount Pictures, made a strategic move. They saw the vast, untapped Spanish-language market in Latin America and Spain. Instead of merely dubbing English film, they decided to produce high-quality features specifically for these audiences, featuring top Latin American talent. And at the very top of that list was Carlos Gardel. Paramount offered him a significant, lucrative contract, an agreement that would transform him from a musical legend into a genuine international movie star. This wasn't a small, independent deal. This was the backing of a major Hollywood powerhouse, a clear signal of the industry's belief in his cross-cultural appeal. Paramount established production units in both Joinville, France, and the Astoria Studios in Long Island, New York. This allowed them to work with European and Latin American film crews and cater to the logistical needs of their international stars. Gardel embraced this new challenge with characteristic enthusiasm. While he had made some earlier, less significant film appearances, including a notable, though largely silent, feature in Argentina, these Paramount productions were on a different scale entirely. They were talking pictures, designed to showcase his voice, his charm, and his burgeoning screen presence. Between 1932 and 1935, Gardel starred in a series of films for Paramount that would solidify his global stardom and become classics in their own right. Titles like Cuesta Abajo, El Tango in Broadway, Melodía de Arrabal, El Día que Me Quieras, and Tango Bar. These weren't complex, multi-layered epics. They were, for the most part, melodic dramas and romantic comedies, often built around thin plots designed primarily as vehicles for Gardel to sing. But what vehicles they were! His performance in these films was captivating. Gardel wasn't a classically trained actor in the dramatic sense, yet he possessed a naturalism and an emotional depth that translated beautifully to the screen. He didn't need grand gestures, a look from his expressive eyes, a subtle shift in his posture, or the simple, profound way he delivered a line could convey worlds of feeling. He played characters who were often extensions of his public persona, charming, melancholic, romantic figures navigating the complexities of love and life, usually set against the backdrop of the tango world. Whether the barrios of Buenos Aires or the dance halls of Paris and New York, the integration of his music was key to the success of these films. The songs weren't just background filler. They were integral to the narrative, often serving as emotional climaxes or moments of deep introspection for the characters. When Gardel sang Volver in El Día que Me Quieras, it wasn't just a performance, it was the character's heartbreaking, yearning for the past. When he delivered Mi Buenos Aires Querido, he sang not just for himself, but for every immigrant, every traveler, every soul who felt the pull of that distant city. These musical numbers were directed with care, often featuring close-ups on Gardel, allowing the audience to connect intimately with the raw emotion of his voice and face. His most famous films from this period, particularly El Día que Me Quieras and Tango Bar, released in 1935, showcase Gardel at the height of his cinematic power. El Día que Me Quieras, a romantic drama co-starring Mexican actress Rosita Moreno and featuring a young Hugo del Carril, is often cited as his masterpiece film. Gardel played a tango singer, naturally, navigating love, betrayal, and redemption. His performance was nuanced, moving beyond the simple crooner to inhabit a more complex character. Tango Bar, his final completed film, returned him to the world of tango clubs, offering more opportunities for performance while still weaving a dramatic tale. Through these films, Gardel's image transformed from a regional music star to a bona fide global heartthrob. His debonair style, the immaculate suits, the fedora tilted just so, the ever-present smile became iconic. He wasn't just her, he was seen larger than life on the silver screen, projecting an aura of sophisticated melancholy and irresistible charm that appealed to diverse audiences across continents. He became synonymous with the romantic ideal, the man who could break your heart with a single note, yet whose smile promised redemption. Working in films also meant adapting to the demanding pace of studio production. There were long hours on set, travel between filming locations in Europe and the United States, and the constant pressure to deliver performances that would satisfy both the studio and his legions of fans. He was surrounded by talented collaborators, most notably Alfredo Lepera, the Brazilian-born lyricist and screenwriter who became Gardel's most important creative partner during the film years. Lepera crafted the poignant, poetic lyrics for many of Gardel's greatest tangos during this era and wrote the screenplays for his Paramount films, tailoring the stories and dialogue perfectly to Gardel's persona and vocal talents. Their collaboration was a fusion of genius that produced timeless works that live on today. By 1935, Carlos Gardel had conquered both the world of music and the world of film. He was a superstar in the truest sense, a cultural ambassador whose fame transcended language barriers. He was at the absolute zenith of his career, enjoying the fruits of his relentless hard work and immense talent. He had everything a performer could dream of: global recognition, critical acclaim, financial success, and the adoration of millions. But even at this glittering peak, the private man still carried the weight of his past. The mystery of his true identity carefully guarded behind the dazzling facade of superstardom. And lurking unseen on the horizon was a final, devastating act that would bring his spectacular journey to a sudden, tragic end. Despite his public persona as a charming, open heartthrob, Carlos Gardel was intensely private. He rarely spoke about his personal life in detail. He never married publicly, a fact that only added to his mystique as the ultimate romantic lead. While rumors of various dalliances circulated, the most consistently reported significant relationship was a long-term, deeply discreet one with a woman named Isabel del Valle. Their connection was kept strictly out of the public eye, a testament to Gardel's fiercely guarded private world. This level of privacy wasn't entirely unusual for stars managed by the powerful studios of the era. Keen to mold and maintain a specific public image, in Gardel's case, the eternally available, romantic bachelor adored by female fans worldwide. The pressure to conform to these expectations was immense in the golden age of entertainment. But for Gardel, the need for secrecy may have run deeper than just career management. It was intricately linked to the fundamental mystery surrounding his very origins, the secret of his birth that we discussed earlier. If the evidence pointing to his French birth in 1890 was accurate, there would have been compelling, practical reasons for him and his mother to maintain a degree of ambiguity about his past. Speculation has long suggested that altering his birth date, perhaps even his nationality, could have been an initial way to avoid mandatory military service in France during a turbulent period. As his fame skyrocketed, built upon the image of the Criollo thrush, correcting the record would have become increasingly complicated, potentially risking his career and his carefully constructed identity as a national hero of Argentina or Uruguay. The lie, or at least the deliberate vagueness, became too big to unravel. So, while he projected effortless charm and open emotion through his music and on the silver screen, the man himself lived a life carefully segmented. A dazzling public spectacle contrasted with a hidden, guarded reality. This divergence between the public image and the private truth likely carried its own weight, a burden of maintaining a secret that grew heavier with each passing year of fame. While he captivated the world with his voice and charisma, a crucial, fundamental piece of his true identity remained elusive, fueling debates and speculation for decades. And as we will see, when that piece finally came to light, decades after his death, it brought not clarity, but contention. For generations after his death, the question of where Carlos Gardel was truly born remained open, a persistent whisper behind the roar of his legend. Argentinians and Uruguayans alike fiercely claimed him as their native son, a sacred icon, citing various pieces of anecdotal evidence, local lore, and passionate belief. To them, he was the Criollo thrush, the very voice of their nations, born from their soil, shaped by their culture. But dedicated historical research, the kind that involves poring over dusty archives, cross-referencing obscure documents, and meticulously piecing together fragmented records from distant lands, finally began to assemble a clearer, albeit deeply controversial, picture. The diligent work of historians and researchers over decades gradually unearthed compelling evidence that challenged the long-held national narratives. Piece by piece, a different origin story began to emerge, supported not by anecdote, but by concrete documentation. The strongest evidence points overwhelmingly to one specific, undeniable origin. Charles Romuald Gardel, born December 11, 1890, in Toulouse, France. The cornerstone of this revelation is his official birth certificate from Toulouse, a document bearing the seal of the French Republic detailing his name, date of birth, and the identity of his mother, Berta Gardez. This wasn't a rumor or a disputed testimony. It was a verifiable historical record. Further supporting this, researchers located the manifest from the ship that brought his mother, Berta Gardez, to Argentina in 1893. It clearly lists her arriving with one young son, named Charles, matching the name and approximate age of the child on the French birth certificate. Over time, a collection of other corroborating documents and testimonies surfaced, early identity papers with inconsistent birth dates, statements from individuals who knew the family in their earliest, pre-fame years in Argentina, all aligning with the narrative of a French-born child brought to Argentina by his single mother. Researchers like Simone Collier and Georges Galopa, among others, painstakingly compiled this evidence, building a case so strong it effectively solved the long-standing mystery for historical purposes. But this solution to this hard-won truth isn't good, and the reasons why delve deep into the complexities of identity, national pride, and the artifice of superstardom. Firstly, and perhaps most poignantly, this revelation delivered a profound, painful blow to the national identity of both Argentina and Uruguay. For generations, Carlos Gardel was more than just a singer. He was a symbol, a source of immense pride, the embodiment of their cultural essence. He was theirs. To learn that their most revered, most iconic Criollo figure was, in fact, born across the ocean in France was, for many, shattering. It felt like losing a part of their very soul, a fundamental aspect of their national narrative challenged by an inconvenient truth. The Criollo thrush was, paradoxically, not Criollo by birth. Secondly, the solved mystery revealed a likely pattern of deliberate deception, or at best, careful obfuscation, regarding his past. While the potential reasons for this concealment, perhaps initially a pragmatic move by his mother or himself to avoid the specter of French military service, then later necessary to maintain his carefully cultivated Criollo image and avoid scandal as his fame exploded, are understandable in context, the truth undeniable suggests that a fundamental piece of his public persona was built on a hidden, altered reality. He lived, performed, and became a legend while keeping a secret about his very origins. This layer of artifice, however necessary it might have seemed at the time, adds a touch of melancholy, exposing the burden of maintaining a false identity even at the peak of dazzling success. Thirdly, instead of bringing closure, this historical clarification ignited intense controversy and even outright denial among a significant portion of his fan base and historical figures. Particularly in Argentina and Uruguay, many simply refused, and still refuse, to accept the overwhelming evidence, preferring the comfort of the cherished national myth. The solved mystery sparked academic battles, public disputes, and passionate arguments that continue to this day. This truth, rather than unifying people around a common understanding, became a source of division and contention. It wasn't a good truth because it didn't heal or simplify. It complicated, challenged, and forced a painful reevaluation of a beloved legend. It's a bittersweet and layered truth. The mystery is gone. But the answer brought pain, dispute, and a recognition of the hidden burdens carried by the legend. Gardel successfully kept his true origins hidden throughout his life, allowing the Criollo myth to flourish. But while the world debated his past, he was living a life at breakneck speed, conquering new heights, unaware that his time was rapidly running out. Okay, here is the content for Part 7 of the script. Focusing on the tragic plane crash, aiming for approximately 400-600 words. By June 1935, Carlos Gardel was no longer just a star. He was a phenomenon, a force of nature sweeping across Latin America. He was undertaking a triumphant, whirlwind tour, playing to sold-out houses in city after city, breaking box office records, and cementing his legendary status with every performance. The adoration he received was immense, a dazzling confirmation of his place at the very top of the entertainment world. He seemed invincible, radiating charm and success. But the pace was relentless, the schedule grueling, demanding peak performance night after night across vast distances. Little did anyone know, this extraordinary journey was hurtling towards a sudden, horrifying end. The date was June 24, 1935. The setting was Olaya Herrera Airport in Medellin, Colombia. It was a typical day at a busy regional airport, a hub of activity as passengers and cargo moved between cities. Gardel and his traveling companions, the trusted members of his inner circle, including his indispensable lyricist and collaborator, Alfredo Lepera, his guitarist, and several others crucial to his operation, gathered to board their flight. Their destination was Cali, the next stop on the non-stop, triumphant tour. The aircraft was a Ford trimotor, a 3-engine plane, a common workhorse for commercial airlines in that era, sturdy, reliable enough for the time, but lacking the advanced safety features of modern aviation. As Gardel's plane, registered as F-31, began its takeoff roll down the runway, the engines roaring to life, building speed for liftoff, a horrifying scenario unfolded. Another aircraft, a Manizales-bound Skade-T, the Colombian-German airline, Ford trimotor, registered as F-32, was also on the runway, apparently maneuvering or preparing for its own departure. The exact sequence of events, the precise cause of the disaster, remains a subject of debate and investigation even decades later. Theories range from pilot error due to poor visibility or misjudgment, a sudden, unpredictable gust of wind, or even a mechanical failure affecting control. But regardless of the cause, the result was instantaneous and catastrophic. As Gardel's aircraft reached takeoff speed, its wing, that solid structure meant to lift it into the sky, violently struck the other plane on the runway. The impact was deafening, a sickening crunch of metal followed by the terrifying sound of tearing structures. Fuel tanks on both aircraft ruptured immediately upon collision. In a heart-stopping flash, the runway became an inferno. Both planes were instantly engulfed in raging flames and thick black smoke. The scene was one of utter chaos and horror. The fire was intense, consuming the wreckage with terrifying speed, trapping most of those inside. Screams were heard in the immediate aftermath, but they were quickly overwhelmed and silenced by the roar of the blaze. Of the passengers and crew on both aircraft, the survival rate was tragically low. Only a handful managed to escape the fiery wreckage. Carlos Gardel, his brilliant writing partner Alfredo Lepera, the lyrical genius responsible for shaping the words of hits like Volver and Mi Buenos Aires Querido during his film era, his guitarist, and the majority of his loyal entourage perished in the crash. Their lives, so full of talent and promise, were instantly and brutally extinguished at the very peak of their collaborative success. The news, when it spread from Medellin, sent shockwaves across the globe. It was a loss so immense, so sudden, that for many, it was simply unbelievable. Mass hysteria erupted in cities across Latin America and beyond, as fans grappled with the reality that their beloved icon, the voice that defined their culture, was gone. The journey of his remains back to Buenos Aires became a somber, mass procession, met by millions of grieving fans lining the streets, a testament to the depth of their adoration and the scale of the tragedy. The man who had carefully guarded the mystery of his birth, who lived his life behind a veil of privacy, met his end in a public, terrifying spectacle of destruction. It was the ultimate, heartbreaking twist in a story already marked by hidden truths and complex identity. His death at just 44 years old solidified his legend forever, freezing him in time at the pinnacle of his fame, but leaving the world to mourn not just the loss of a voice, but the violent finality of a life tragically cut short. Carlos Gardel, the king of tango, lives on, his voice eternal. His legacy is a complex tapestry woven with the thread of his immense talent and the shadow of a profound mystery. The truth of his French birth, though historically solved, remains contentious, a truth that wasn't good for the cherished myth. Added to this is the undeniable tragedy of his death in Medellin, a violent end at the peak of his fame. Gardel's story reminds us that even the brightest stars carry hidden burdens and face unforeseen, cruel fates, leaving behind an immortal legacy marked by both brilliance and sorrow.